Scary story time at 3 a.m. in National Park edition. It's actually 4 in the morning, but yeah, I started it at 3. I have to whisper, guys, but you already know. Get your money's worth and what? Let it drain. Okay. This story time was sent in by a girl named Mallory, but it's about her older cousin Tom. Tom worked in a national forest. He was a park ranger. So part of Tom's job was to just make sure people were okay, and if they were lost, he would try to find them. You know, people went missing in forests a lot. No one had ever gone missing in the time that Tom was there, and this was his second year working there. Until one day, he was notified that a woman had went missing in the woods. In Tom's head, it's a big deal, but it wasn't really a big deal because the way his coworkers explained, they made it seem like they found missing people all the time. So he did his rounds, he checked in the spots that, someone who would go missing would usually be, and they couldn't find her. It had been 10 hours at this point that she was alone in the woods. Not to mention, it was winter, so it was freezing outside. There was really nothing Tom or Tom's team could do, so they went home that night, and Tom could not get this poor woman off of his mind. 3 days go by and they find the missing woman, but unfortunately she is unalived. In a brutal way, I might add. It was horrifying. Can't really go into details on this app. Put like this smell good, a little bit of that in there. It smells so good. This is so pretty, oh my gosh. The woman was unalived by someone else, y'all. Now, you may think the story ends there, but it doesn't. The story is low-key just getting creepier. This is during one of Tom's night shifts, and he starts to hear like talking outside, and it's late. So he goes to check, and this is where he sees somebody far off in the distance of the woods just standing there. He gets his flashlight, and he sees a woman covered in blood. After Tom sees that woman, he knows in his head something's up. So he didn't chase after her because it's the middle of the night and it's freezing outside, and that woman was running, and it was also like she wanted him to chase her. So the next night, it's his night shift again, and this is where he hears blood-curdling screams. Keep in mind, Tom is by himself. He's by himself. So when I'm getting goosebumps. He hears these blood-curdling screams. He looks outside again, and what does he see? He sees a woman standing off by the post, and she's like just screaming. So he takes his flashlight. She runs away. This is where things get weird though. After he goes back in, he hears complete silence from the forest, which is strange because it's a forest and it's completely silent. Not a bug, not a noise, not nothing. And then he hears crying so loud it could like pierce your eardrums. And he is freaked out because again, he's here by himself, and he thinks that whatever, like the poor woman who was unalived a couple of days, or I think, what was it, a week ago? I cannot remember. He thinks she's haunting the place. So after the third night of complete torture, he quits the job. I wish I could show y'all up close. Oh no, y'all could see. Look at the goosebumps. He quits the job. And on his drive home, because of course it's a wooded area and his home is like 40 minutes away, he sees a woman in the middle of the street covered in blood. And he steers away, and he stops until he realizes that that's the woman who was unalived just days prior. Mind you, this is like 30 minutes from the site that it happened. We don't know, he doesn't really explain why he believes she was personally haunting him, but y'all, I don't know, that one gave me goosebumps. But anyways, y'all, look at this line that won't activate. It's so pretty, but it just won't activate. Like, I feel like it's activating now, but like, my slimes always activate towards the end, and I'm tired of that. But here's this line. It's so pretty. I'm gonna call it Blueberry Shine. So yeah. So here's that scary story time.
I went through a phase where I was doing a lot of witchcraft, and I only hexed somebody once. Okay, and that person did deserve it, but it destroyed my family, and also it made the house I was living in extremely fucking haunted. So let's just drive right into it, okay? The person I hexed was my stepmom. And if you know, you know. If you've been watching my content, my stepmom has bullied me my whole fucking life. Since she's been with my dad, she has done nothing but make my life a living fucking hell. I'm not gonna get into specifics here, just know my stepmom was just like the Cinderella story. She fucking despised me, she had it out for me, she made my childhood awful. Anyway, on this day in particular, I'm an adult at this point, right? And my dad tells me, hey, stepmom is feeling very left out. Ever since y'all grown up, y'all have not had a relationship with her. I'm like, oh, you wonder fucking why, right? Anyway, he pulled at my heartstrings and he was like, can you just please like spend some time with stepmom and try to make her feel included because she's feeling very left out. So at this point in my life, I was buying my first RV and I was like, you know what? I'll invite stepmom to come with me to buy this RV. This is a huge milestone in my life. I'm able to buy my own home, even though it's not, you know, that great of an accomplishment. It was to me at that time. So I invite stepmom and she was like, okay, sure, I'll go. She actually picked me up. Okay, she picks me up, we head to the place to buy the RV, right? And we're sitting in front of the guy, and he was like, hey, how do you plan on hauling this RV? I'm like, oh, that Tahoe you see outside, I'm gonna use that Tahoe. My stepmom looks at me. She was like, you're gonna use the Tahoe to haul the RV? And I'm like, yeah, my dad said I could use the Tahoe to haul the RV. I make the transaction, we get back into her car, the Tahoe, and we're heading back home. And I noticed the whole drive, she's very quiet. I'm trying to make conversation because I'm not good with quiet, okay? And there's like no music on. I'm feeling very awkward, so I'm trying to like start a conversation. She's very short, she's very dry, and I'm like, okay, whatever. She drops me off, I go on about my day, super happy that I just bought my first RV, right? About an hour and a half later, I get a long text message from her stating that I am so disrespectful, that she doesn't want to be around me, she doesn't want a relationship with me or my siblings, she's done with us for good. I'm sitting here like, what the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about? So I call my dad immediately and I'm like, what the fuck is this text message from stepmom? Like, what the fuck is she talking about? This is how she alliterated our conversation, right? Oh, you're gonna use the Tahoe to haul the RV? This is how she portrays the story. Yeah, I'm gonna use the Tahoe for the RV. My dad said it's okay. That did not happen. But my dad, after that, texted me and told me that he can no longer have a relationship with me out of respect for his wife. So I am fuming because, again, this is what I've been dealing with my whole childhood. I would be having a normal conversation with her and she would spin it into something that was not reality. So it was just extremely triggering that I, again, tried to have a relationship with this dumb, delusional bitch. And again, she spins it in a way to make it to where I've lost my father. I've lost a relationship with my father because she's a fucking liar. So I am fuming. I go home and I'm like, yep, I'm casting a spell on this bitch. She was known to be a drug addict, okay? Plain and simple, she's had drug issues, right? So I get a prescription pill bottle and I fill it up with vinegar. I put all the spices in my cabinet, the chili pepper, the cayenne pepper, all kinds of shit. I put all the spicy shit in there. I had like a stray casting bullet that I had. I don't know where the fuck I got it or where I found it. But anyway, I put that bullet in there. Like, I just wanted everyone to hate this bitch. My intentions that I put into this spell was that, number one, either everyone find out what kind of monster and evil fucking person this bitch is, so she quits making it seem like I'm the bad one. I wanted everyone to know how bad she was. I put the little pill bottle full of vinegar and all the spices and bullets and shit, I put it in the freezer, and I totally forgot about it. So over the next of the few months, right, after I casted this spell, I started having the most insane fucking dreams. Okay, I would have a dream of me being in the house that I casted the spell in, right? And I have a dream that I'm running down the hallway of that house and it's really dark and I'm just like trying to run to my room and that there's something behind me chasing me. And every time I had this dream, whatever was chasing me would touch my shoulder and I would literally feel my soul leaving my body. Like as if I was like levitating off the ground and I would see my body on the ground. Like I kept having that same dream. There was also multiple times I was laying on my bed and I could hear something right now. Like I would be laying on a pillow, right? And I could hear something right next to the pillow scratching right next to my ear on the pillow, like. And I would just constantly feel this presence of fucking evil all the time, okay? I was so fucking scared. It was really hard for me to sleep in this house because I just kept feeling a presence around me. It was really hard to explain. Anyways, 3 months after this spell, a very dark and twisted and evil reality came out about my stepmom. And out of respect for my family, they've asked me not to share this story on my platform because it is that bad. My stepmom did something so evil and awful to another family member in my family, and it's absolutely destroyed my whole family. And it's actually the whole reason why my dad finally left my stepmom, was because of this secret that came out. And it was so bizarre because it wasn't like my stepmom was caught. She literally just came out and admitted to this evil thing that she did, and it made my whole family hate her. Okay, it was that bad. And my dad finally divorced her because of this evil secret that she admitted. So after I moved out of this house, my family members actually moved into the house after I left that house. Okay, I was just renting the house. I move out, my family members move into that house, okay, because it was a really good deal. It was a really nice house and it was very affordable, right? So my family members move into the house. They have no idea that I casted this spell on my stepmom, right? And they're calling me and they're like, dude, I keep having dreams of me like levitating off the bed. Like, this house is so fucking haunted. They also go on to say that they were all in the kitchen just like cooking dinner and a fucking knife flew across the kitchen. And then another family member comes to me and they're like, hey, we actually found a exorcism lady in Tennessee who does like exorcism professionally, and we're thinking about taking stepmom to her because stepmom's just fucking deranged, okay? There's something wrong with stepmom. They think that she's actually possessed. And they're like, we're going to take her to this exorcism lady in Tennessee. And the whole time I'm like, because I'm thinking they're going to take her out there and this demon's going to come out of my stepmom and they're going to be like, Ashley did it. Ashley casted a spell. Like, I don't want this demon telling on me, right? But anyway, they don't actually like ever take her to this exorcism lady. They probably fucking should. But I'm kind of glad they didn't because I'm just worried that the demon's going to tell on me. But anyway, I guess they don't have to tell on me now because I'm posting this video. So, yeah. I haven't really experienced, knock on wood, I haven't experienced like anything haunted or anything like that ever since I left that house. But my bad.
My grandmother offended La Santa Muerte, and this is what happened. So this lady says that her mother was a big devotee of La Santa Muerte, but that her parents and family were not. Anytime her grandparents would come over to their house, they would always talk down to her mom and to her for having like her on a shrine and things like that. Now she says that she wasn't a devotee of La Santa Muerte, but she respected that her mom was. She also explains that the Santa Muerte has been very good to her mom. One day her grandparents got to their house in a surprise visit, and that her mom was like running around the house getting pictures, getting these candles, getting like little figurines that she had all over the place, hide them just because she didn't want to hear it. After this, the mom decided that she was going to make them lunch. So as her mom was making food in the kitchen, she sees that her grandmother goes into her mom's bedroom. Now she followed her grandmother, and she says that she notices that the grandmother's like opening drawers and just looking through her mom's things. She sees that the grandmother's focusing on the drawer that her mom had a whole bunch of Santa Muerte things in there. She also sees when the grandmother got something from the drawer and she hid it in her clothes. She didn't get to see what it was that she hid in her clothes, but at that point she was like, the food is ready, you need to come with me. So she basically is like grabbing her grandmother to take her to the kitchen because obviously she was doing something wrong. Minutes later, she says that she sees her grandmother turn on this like big cauldron thing that they had outside, and that is where she sees that the grandmother throws Santa Muerte figurine and pictures that she had taken out of her mom's room. She's literally setting fire to these items that did not belong to her. And as you can imagine, ever since that day, everything started to go bad. The grandmother already had diabetes, but it started to get worse. She got bedridden, and this is where she would start to cry and scream and say that she was seeing La Santa Muerte in the middle of the night in her bedroom. A lot of bad things happened to both of her grandparents in such short amount of time. Her mom also found out what the mom had done, and she didn't even tell anything to her mom because she respected her that much. Her mom does end up going to La Santa Muerte and asking her to please forgive her, that her mom's ignorant, that she didn't know what she was doing. She was asking for forgiveness on behalf of her mom. She does end up lighting up a few candles, and every single day for like the next 7 days she would pray to her. Now the grandparents did suffer like 3 more days of really bad shit, but thanks to her mom, things did start getting better. She says that she tells this story as a warning. Please do not play with the Santa Muerte because she is not someone that you should mess with. If you don't believe in her or if you don't understand her, then at the very least you should respect her. But what do you guys think?
One Halloween night, a group of friends were outside having fun until they encountered a mimic. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account I tell spooky stories either submitted to me or found on the internet. Today's story comes from Genevieve. This happened a while ago, but it's still the only time something like this has ever happened to me. We were at my friend's house having a Halloween sleepover. There was a bonfire going outside, and her older siblings were all hanging out near it. We wanted to mess with them a little, so we went over by her shed where there were these metal pipes sticking out of the ground. We thought it would be funny to crouch down and sing into them to make our voices sound louder and creepier. There were 6 of us, 4 on one side of the shed and 2 on the other. We had only been doing it for maybe about 10 seconds when all of us just stopped, because something was moving towards us. At first, I thought it was one of our siblings trying to scare us, but the way it was moving didn't look right. Its limbs looked twisted, and it was crawling. Fast. Way too fast. And I couldn't make out a face at all. We started running. We didn't stop until we got back inside and into my friend's room. She called her brother right away and asked if they were messing with us, but they weren't. They were all still at the fire or in the camper. While we were on the phone, someone joked about what it could have been. Right after that, there was loud knocking on the window, fast and aggressive. I didn't even look. I just shut the blinds and we all ran out of the room. When we told my friend's aunt what happened, she stopped us halfway through. She just kind of looked at us and said, "You shouldn't have been singing out there." That was all she said. Later that night, we went back outside to the fire. Nothing was really happening, but everything kind of just felt off. At some point, me and one of my friends walked a little further out toward the edge of the woods. There's about 200 feet between the fire and the tree line, and we stopped right where the yard ends. We were just talking like normal, not really thinking about it anymore. Then we both went quiet. About 15 feet in front of us, just inside of the woods, something was standing there. It was tall, way taller than a person, at least 8 feet, and it wasn't moving at all. Its head was tilted slightly, its arms were too long, and they bent in weird directions. We just stood there for a second, and then we ran back to the fire. We didn't tell anyone what we saw. The rest of the night was weird. Nothing huge happened, but it felt like something was still out there and watching us. The next morning, we went back to where it first happened. We stood in the same spots and talked through what we saw, and as soon as we got close to that area again, it felt cold. After a while, I started singing again as a joke, just for a few seconds. Then I stopped, because something repeated it, and not from far away. It was close. Same words, but slightly off, like it was trying to copy me, but didn't fully get it right. We ran immediately, and while we were running, I could hear footsteps right behind us. Heavy, fast, and way too close. This is so creepy, and this definitely sounds like a mimic to me. I'd be curious to know where this story takes place. And of course it had to be on Halloween night. Like, that just makes the whole thing even more creepy. But you know, like, if I was an entity, if I was a mimic, I would purposely go out and try to, like, start shit on Halloween, I think, just for fun. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me, and I will get to them if I can. I will see you in the next one.
What would you do if you got on the wrong train car late at night and every single person inside was standing facing the wall? This is Scared with Jess, and this story is about a woman who said that she got on the wrong train car at night and she wished she never stepped inside. A couple years ago, I got off work later than usual and missed my normal train home. It was close to midnight and the station was mostly empty, and I was tired enough that I barely noticed which car I stepped into before the doors shut behind me. And the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not normal late night transit public quiet. No one on their phones or no one coughing, and no headphones leaking music. Nothing. No one was talking or sitting next to each other, and every single person in the car was standing, and all of them were facing the wall. At first, my brain genuinely tried to make it into something normal, some weird prank or art thing, or some group I didn't understand. There were maybe 10 or 12 people in there, spaced out along both sides of the car, all standing close to the walls with their backs towards the middle. Some had their heads bowed a little, and one looked like their forehead was resting lightly against the glass. Another had both hands flat against the advertisement panel above the seats. One smaller figure, maybe a child, was actually standing on the seat to reach higher. But none of them turned when I got on. None of them reacted at all. The train started moving and I realized something else was wrong. I stumbled a little when it lurched forward, and they didn't. Not one of them shifted their balance. Not one reached for a pole or a strap, and they just sat there perfectly still, facing the wall while the train rocked under all of us. And that was when I stopped thinking it was some dumb joke. I stayed near the door at first, not moving much and pretending to check my phone while I watched them out of the corner of my eye. And some of them were barefoot, and that detail hit me a few seconds late and made everything worse. Bare feet on the dirty train floor. There was bare feet standing perfectly still while the car rattled and shook. I looked towards the door between cars because I'd figure I'd just move at the next stop. But when I stepped over and tried the handle, it wouldn't open. Not locked exactly, just dead, like it wasn't connected to anything. And right as I realized that, one of the women near the front end of the car spoke. She didn't turn around. She just said in a calm voice, "You're in the wrong car." Every part of me went cold. Nobody else moved. I looked around, waiting for someone to laugh or react or break whatever this was, but nothing. The woman stayed facing the wall, and I actually said, "What?" And then another voice, somewhere closer this time, said, "Don't stand the wrong way." And that one sounded older, still calm, but not turning around. At that point, I hit the emergency intercom, but nothing. No sound or light, no response at all. I checked my phone, but no signal. I know people say that all the time in scary movies and it sounds convenient, but I actually remember staring at the screen thinking that even one bar would have made me feel less insane. And the train kept moving. I looked at the windows again, hoping to figure out where we were between stops, and outside was mostly black glass with flashes of tunnel light. And in the reflection, I saw something that made my legs feel weak. In real life, every person in the car was still facing the wall. But in the window reflection, 3 of them were facing me. Not all the way, though, just enough. Enough that I could see pieces of faces where there should have been the backs of heads. Enough that I could tell one of them was smiling. I spun around so fast my bag slammed into the side of the pole, and they were still facing the wall. Every single one. Exactly the way they'd been before. I started backing away from the windows after that. The smallest figure in the car, the one standing on the seat, made a soft whispering sound against the wall. Not talking to me, but talking into it. Like it thought something was listening on the other side. And then the first woman spoke again, still calm and facing away. "Face the wall before they notice." I said, "What?" And she didn't answer. The train started slowing down, and I looked up at the stop display over the doors, desperate for something normal or some station name I recognize, and the display was blank. Outside the windows, the train eased past the dark platform with no one on it and almost no lighting. There was a sign there, but it went by too fast and the lettering looked wrong anyway, like I was trying to read something through water. And the doors opened. Nobody got off or turned around. No one even shifted. I should have run right then, but instead I froze because from further down the car, a man's voice said very softly, "Now they know which one is yours." That broke whatever was left of my ability to act normal. I ran for the open doors, and as I moved, I made the mistake of looking back one more time, and one of them had turned, a woman near the center of the car. Her body was still angled towards the wall, but her head had turned much further than it should have, looking at me over her shoulder. And her face was wrong. Not bloody or destroyed, just wrong in a way that made my whole body understand before my mind did. The eyes looked too dark and too deep, and the mouth was a little too wide, hanging open slightly like she had been waiting to say something worse. And then she smiled. I got off the train so fast I nearly slipped on the platform, and the doors shut behind me immediately. I ran to the glass and looked in, and the car was empty, completely empty. No standing passengers or barefoot people, nothing. Just rows of seats and my own reflection in the dark window. And then the train pulled away. I stood on the platform for maybe 10 seconds before I realized I had no idea where I was. I was not at a station I recognized, and there was no attendant booth, no one else waiting, one flickering light over the stairs. That was it. I ended up calling my sister the second I got enough signal once I climbed back up to street level, and she stayed on the phone with me while I got an Uber because I was crying too hard to act like a normal person at that point. And the next day, I checked the transit map. There was no stop on that line where I'd gotten off. Not by that name and not by that area, not at all. And I know what I saw. I know there was people in that car, and I know one of them told me I was in the wrong one. And sometimes now, when I'm on trains late at night, and the windows are dark enough to turn the whole car into a mirror, I still think about what I saw in the reflection before I ran, because I don't think that they were facing that wall at all. I think they were facing whatever was on the other side of it. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Every culture that spends enough time in the wilderness ends up describing the same horned creature that moves through the trees. And I think this is related to this same goat creature that people are reporting seeing all over the American South, especially around campgrounds. And I just received an email from a woman who said that she just heard the story from the couple who claimed to see this goat-like creature eating a body on Memorial Day weekend. And it reminded her of a story that her neighbor told her a couple years ago. So her neighbor is this elderly guy, and she said that he is a retired park ranger. He worked for the Army Corps of Engineers forever and spent the majority of his career patrolling federal land and campgrounds. He described him as basically being a straight shooter. Like, he would roll his eyes anytime someone talked about Bigfoot or ghost stories or anything like that, which is why what he told her sort of stuck with her. But a few years ago, she was out in her backyard, and she said they live on a small lake in Kentucky, and she had some friends over. They had a little fire going, and her neighbor came over, and she was on like a casual acquaintance basis with him, and he pulled up a chair and he was sitting with them for a little while. And the topic got on to like ghost stories and things that go bump in the night. And so she asked him, like, hey, have you ever seen anything that genuinely scared you when you were working as a park ranger? And he was like, yeah, of course I have. She was fully expecting him to tell her a story that was based in reality, like about a creepy person he's maybe encountered in the woods. But he's like, well, you wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway. And she was like, yes, we would. Like, and so at this point, her and her friends are begging this man to tell them. And he's like, well, honestly, I don't know what it was. First I thought it was an animal because it had horns. And then I thought it was a demon because of the eyes. And I don't know what it was, but I know that whatever creature it is real, and we don't acknowledge them. According to her, his voice changed when he said this. It was just very matter of fact. And he starts telling her that in 1977, he was assigned to this parcel of land. It was essentially like a recreation area that bordered a lake. And back then there were thousands of acres and fewer visitors and also fewer cameras. That fall, the rangers started getting all of these reports from visitors saying that they reported hearing like these strange screams and missing pets. And they also reported this horned creature that was watching them from the trees. And of course, all of this was written off as nature and wildlife and as bears even. But then a maintenance worker vanished, and they found his truck parked by a remote boat launch. The truck was turned off, but the keys were still in the ignition, and his lunch was still in the front seat. And there weren't any signs of struggle or like some foul play had happened. So they're like, okay, this guy must be around here somewhere. So he and his team start searching the area. And it wasn't like this maintenance worker had been missing for a prolonged amount of time. I think it was just the majority of the day from the way that she said that this guy made it seem. But they're looking, and it's starting to get dark out. And he looks up on a ledge, and he sees this like horned creature looking down at him. And he said at first he thought it was a deer, but then it stood up on two legs. He and his team shined flashlights up to it to kind of make out whatever this was. And its eyes reflected the light from like 100 yards away. He said this thing stood at least 7 foot tall on two legs, and it didn't have antlers like a deer. It had horns that curved backwards like a goat, and its knees were backward jointed. He said everybody they were with froze, and they were just staring at this thing, trying to figure out what it was. And this thing just stared at them for a minute, and that's what actually scared him. He said the way that it was looking at them was like it was challenging them, like they had come into its territory, and then just walked silently back into the trees. Nobody that he was with knew what this thing was, and after it disappeared, they're all talking about it, and like they're trying to come up with a logical explanation because they've all worked out there forever, and they know every animal that inhabits it, and like nothing makes sense. Like, what creature walks on two legs with backward jointed knees? So anyway, they get back to like their ranger station or whatever. Still have not found this maintenance worker, by the way, and then they all get called into the head ranger's office. Apparently one of the rangers had reported this creature to the head ranger, and so he calls everybody in, and he closes his office door behind them, and he's like, I need to know exactly what you saw. And he said that the look on his face was one of genuine worry. So they describe the horns, the height, the backward jointed knees, and the eyes, and the entire time the head ranger does not look like he's surprised, just sitting there silently. And then finally he says, well, did it see you? And one of the rangers is like, yeah, I think so. And he just sighs and he says, well, tell me it was alone. It was alone, right? And so the rangers are like, yeah, I think it was alone. Like, well, that's the one saving grace in all of this. And so the rangers are like, well, what was it? And he was like, well, it depends on who you ask. The Norse has one name for it, and Celts have another name for it, and the Greeks have another. But It's all really the same thing. And one of the rangers actually laughs at this point because he's like, you guys are talking about Norse gods in here. And the head ranger just stares at him. And he was like, why do you think that there's so many stories about old horned gods? That's when allegedly this head ranger goes to a filing cabinet and he pulls out this big black binder and he starts showing them all of these old newspaper clippings about missing hunters and disappeared fishermen, missing campers, and handwritten entries by former rangers that stretched back decades. Most of the entries describe this same large humanoid type creature that stood about 7 feet tall with shiny eyes and curved goat horns. Also about animals and bodies that were found in different parts of the forest. And he slides the binder over to them and he gives them all a piece of paper and he's like, I need you to write down a report of everything that you saw, describe it in full detail, and I'm going to add it to the binder. So one of the workers asks, like, so we're reporting this because of the missing maintenance worker? And the head ranger is like, no, this isn't about disappearances. This is about these things returning. He said that since they've been documenting it, these creatures show up every 20 to 25 years. We don't know what they are, but he said that whatever they are, if you see one, it's not alone. And apparently, he also told them that they never found that missing maintenance worker. With that, her neighbor ends the story, and so they're all like, whoa, so what do you think it was? And he was like, I don't know, but what I do know after working there for so long is that those parks are regulated by rules. But just as much as they're regulated by rules, they're regulated by belief systems that keep everything in order. So whether it's related to that other story that I shared about the couple that just saw this creature on Memorial Day, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. If you have any ideas about what this is, if you have a sighting of your own, or if you have an otherwise spooky, scary story time you think no one would believe, please feel free to send it in. We would love to hear it.
Want to get creeped out? Have you ever heard of the story where a 16-year-old girl goes home from Canada to Macau to visit family and winds up witnessing a possession? Because it's really creepy, it's really scary, and we have a podcast episode on it, and you should probably watch it.
At the end of the week, Flora's family followed their routine in visiting a healer because they would do this every week. And on this particular visit, her dad said that her uncle wanted to come as well because his back was hurting. And they were also going to bring her cousin because of his behavioral problems.
Yeah, good idea.
The hope was that the energy session might cleanse him or calm him. It's also good to note that Flora describes this day as a beautiful summer day with a blue sky.
Okay.
Flora, her father, her uncle, and her cousin all went to see the healer. They crossed the border into China to reach the healer's home. And the healer's home only had 2 rooms. The living room where people would wait and the healing room. The rooms were connected and the door to the healing room was left open so people could see inside.
Oh, interesting.
Flora said that the healer was jovial, warm, happy, just a really nice woman. And she greeted Flora warmly, gave her a hug. She greeted Flora's father. But when the healer looked at Flora's cousin, she immediately said she would start with him first. Normally there was a different order, but she insisted that she was going to start with the boy.
The creepy kid first.
Yeah, exactly. She spoke in Mandarin and told him to come sit and lie down on the massage bed. The cousin refused to enter the room. He asked why they were there and said he didn't want to go in. He repeatedly refused, saying, no, I'm not going in. You're not doing that to me. Despite his resistance, he was placed on the bed.
Oh, you are 8.
Exactly. There were small chairs along the wall, and that is where Flora and her uncle and her dad sat and watched. The healing room only contained the bed, the chair near the patient's head for the healer, and a large poster of Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy, on the opposite wall. The healer remained calm and smiling, and she asked the cousin, who are you? What's your name? The cousin began sniffing.
Oh, no.
Sniffing. He was
like a dog.
Yeah, he was like doing that.
Creepy.
And Flora said his hands kind of became claw-like and he started moving them rapidly, like similar to a squirrel.
What the fuck? Jesus.
The healer told the father of the boy to put his hands on his stomach to keep him from moving around. So he did that.
Wow.
She placed her hand on the cousin's forehead, the boy's forehead, and he began moving his head around rapidly.
What the fuck?
And Flora said he looked like a trapped animal. She said his nose and mouth, it looked like they were squishing together kind of as he made these strange noises. And he began speaking in a dialect that Flora did not understand. Flora's father also seemed confused. The uncle began translating what the boy was saying. And this is when Flora realized that this was not a dialect that her father knew, which she found surprising. The uncle explained it because he was shocked. And he said the boy was speaking a very old dialect from their region that no one spoke anymore, no one taught anymore.
Oh, okay.
Weird. But the uncle, he knew the dialect, so he continued. And the cousin is still moving around weird, sniffing. And in this dialect, he said, "Who's this? Who's this person? She smells like a killer. She smells like a killer."
What the hell? Fuck.
The healer remained very calm and would repeatedly ask, "What is your name? Who are you? Get out of this, child."
Oh, God.
And Flora said at this point, the room started to smell like a wet animal.
Ew.
Then the boy starts foaming at the mouth and spitting.
Now imagine walking alone in a forest and then suddenly somebody calls you from this hole, like you can literally recognize a human voice coming from the inside. It all started with this guy called Jacob who was biking in the woods. You see, Jacob was having fun, doing his hobby, which was dirt biking, but then something unexpected happened. What happened is that while he was biking, Jacob started finding bones everywhere, as you can see. And the thing with these bones is that they were shattered across the area where he was. So this was weird, but what can he do about it? Like, these are probably some animal bones, caused by animals. It's nature, it's like that, it's not a big deal. That's what probably Jacob told himself, and he decided to keep going on his way. He hopped on his bike, he kept biking until he saw more bones. I mean, a lot more this time. And the weird thing this time is that they were not shattered like the last time. No, this time it was put one after another, like somebody wanted you to find them. Kept following these bones, and this time it became a lot clearer that these bones were a path to this cave right here. So Jacob approached this cave confused while wondering what's going on, and this is where something creepy happened. You see, while he was trying to grab something, he literally heard a voice saying help. Like, yes, somebody was stuck inside saying help. So the moment Jacob heard that, obviously he freaked out. He backed up and started asking who is that. But you see, the voice inside the cave was repeating one word, which was help. When Jacob heard that, he was like, oh yeah, hell no, let's get out of here. He made a distance between him and a cave, and then he was like, man, you know what? Maybe I'm just hearing stuff. I mean, there's absolutely no way somebody's saying hello from the inside. I'm just imagining stuff. You know what? Okay, let me call. Hello? Alright, nobody's responding, and this is where he got an idea. I won't say a brilliant one, but at least an idea. The idea was to grab a stick and then throw it inside the hole to see what happens. Okay, you know what? Why not? And that's exactly what he did. He grabbed a stick and threw it inside. And the moment it came inside, it landed, somebody, whoever was there, whatever was there, was inside, threw a stick too. When Jacob saw a stick being thrown back, he was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely not imagining this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out.
I got a pretty good idea. I can see some stuff up here by these rock formations. So, it's possible that it could be over here. We may never know though until we check. I had to drive quite a bit away to go to my buddy's house, and then there was a bike ride away to get to where I'm at right now. There's just a bunch of bones scattered. It's like a trail just leading me. That was a bone I just broke. Bro, is that my fork? What? Hello?
No.
Why is that?
No.
Hello? What the hell? Bro, I don't care about my bike. Hello? Is anybody there? I don't know, dude. Am I just hearing things? Hello? What the Yep, nope, I'm good.
So obviously Jacob immediately got home after that, and I'm not gonna lie, I think I would have done the same. Now some people in the comments of the video were saying, oh my god, why didn't you help him? Well, let me tell you that it's easier said than done. What if he was one step away from being dragged inside if he came too close? But Jacob, come on man, you could have at least called the police. Obviously Jacob didn't do that because he was freaked out and he immediately thought of surviving, and I don't blame them. A lot of people would have done the same. But you know what's even scarier? Some people think that whoever was inside was not human. They think that it was a jinn, and let me explain why. See, some people suggest that it's a jinn because of the bones, because it's known that jinns consume bones. You know how humans eat regular food? Well, jinns eat bones. That's why there's, so many bones around. To that, it was in a tiny place far from sight and humans, and the voice definitely sounded weird. It sounded distorted. So, it could be. That's just what people say, and sometimes people say a lot of bullshit, and, at the end of the day, we don't really know what was going on inside.
One of my friends a few years ago got invited to a party in the Hollywood Hills. They were a photographer at the time, and the person who invited them just wanted snippets of the private event. The address arrived the same day as the party. There was no name, no details. It was just a location. And as my friend got to the place, they said that it was like a hotel. It wasn't really a home. It was massive. There was huge gates, there was valet parking, there was tons of security, but they said that it was pretty easy to get into this party, and they were a little confused about that. Like, they didn't check like a license, they didn't check for any background info. They literally just asked for his name, saw it on the list, and they let him in. When he got into the party, he said there was maybe like 100 people there. Actors, musicians, influencers. He said that he definitely recognized a few people right off the bat. Something they noticed about this party as well is the phones were intact. Everybody had their phones. It wasn't taken away. And everybody was drinking, talking, taking lots of pictures. But they noticed that nobody was really on social media posting these pictures. Another detail that seemed odd was he noticed that there was clocks everywhere. They were on the walls, they were on the tables. He figured that it was like part of the theme or some kind of party decor, but every single time on the clocks was 11:17, like exactly 11:17. He went and checked his phone, and he noticed that it was 1:43 a.m. And there was a lady at the party who came by him, and she said they never really changed them. And that was that. She walked away. 2 a.m. rolls around, and my friend is going to look for a bathroom. They're going down hallways. They're getting a little lost because it's a huge place. And they find this hallway they're going down is a large, like, corridor. Like, it's huge. And they notice that there's these frames up on the wall. And as they're looking at the pictures while they walk down, they notice that it is a picture of the same room in every single picture. The only differences in these pictures were the people in it. It was different decades, different faces, different clothing, but the time remained the same. Every single party had a clock in it, and it was at 11:17. As he was staring at these pictures, a man came behind him, and he said, "Hey, you shouldn't be down here." And when my friend turned around, he said that he was wearing like a suit. He looked like the owner of the house. And the man asked him, "What date do you think that picture was taken?" And so my friend looked back at the frame, and they noticed that there was a date that said 1964. And the guy nodded, and then he told me, "What about that one?" And we went down all of the photos. There was one that was like 1988, another one was 2007. But the weird part is the room never changed. It never got updated. It was the same furniture, same wallpaper. Even some of the people in it, the faces, were familiar, like they were out in the party that was currently happening. Not every single person, but a few. My friend turned around and he said that's impossible because the people looked the exact same in the 1988 picture as they looked upstairs when I was talking to them. And then the man said, "What time is it?" And so my friend went to pull out his phone, and he said that his phone was completely dead, like black screen, wouldn't turn on. And the man said, "That's what I thought." Someone came and they escorted my friend back upstairs. Nobody was rude, but they did get him out of the hallway. As he was being walked out, somebody let him know that his services were no longer needed. They were smiling, they weren't rude about it. But they took him back out to the valet, and he drove home. It was about a 20-minute drive. This is where it gets really strange, though, because they arrived home, and his roommate was there waiting, and he said, "Hey, like, I've been calling you," and they seemed really stressed. And my friend was like, "What's the problem? Like, my phone died. I'm so sorry." And the roommate let him know, "You've been gone for 3 days." My friend charged his phone, and when he turned it back on, he noticed in the camera roll that there was the last picture that he took of the night, and it was at 11:17 p.m., 3 days earlier. The craziest part is when he was looking at the photographs down the hallway, he noticed the very last one was decades earlier, sure, but he noticed that there was a guy in the back that looked an awful lot like him, and he was staring straight at the camera. That's the picture that he was staring at so intently when the guy came behind him and told him that he was not supposed to be in the hallway. Nobody has proof that my friend is telling the truth on what he was saying, but I definitely believe him.
Living next to the woods can be creepy. It's not for everyone because you will see things, you will hear things. It can get very weird. And there's a particular set of rules that if you find yourself living next to the woods or the forest, that you should follow. Now, the first rule is at nighttime, always lock your doors, always close your curtains. Also, at nighttime, never look out the window facing the woods. If you hear a knock at your door at nighttime, do not answer it, especially if it is your back door. You will see lights coming from the woods. Do not follow them. Do not try and communicate with them. Just ignore them. And the most important thing you must remember is that anything you see outside, most likely it's not real. You are not seeing it, or you are not hearing it. Now, this story comes out of Tennessee. There's this man named Christian. Christian said that at one point in time, he grew up in this farmhouse that was out in the boonies. And he said they lived deep, deep in the woods, and it was a dirt road that took several miles to get to their house. And they literally had no neighbors around. Well, he said when they first moved in, there was a lot of weird stuff that would happen. For instance, the dogs didn't want to go anywhere near the woods. They would get to the tree line and they would turn around. And it was like they were afraid of something. They also noticed these deer. They would come into their yard at night and they would just be staring out into the woods like they were scared of something. And then one night, something very strange happened. So it was about 11 o'clock at night. And on the back door, they hear boom, 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 a knock. And that's when his father goes to the back door and he opens it up. There was no one out there. He said as he looked out into the woods, he started to hear screams. And it sounded like someone was in trouble. So he said he got up and him and his father went outside and they started looking around. They couldn't see anybody. So eventually they called the police. And the police came out and they searched the area. They couldn't find anyone. Well, on a regular basis, they started hearing screams outside their house coming from the woods. And every night, something would be knocking on their back door. A few times, they found the back door wide open. The other weird thing that started happening is Christian's brother started having these weird nightmares. And not only was he having nightmares, he started to sleepwalk. And he would get up from his bed, he would walk down the hallway into the kitchen and out the back door. And right before he would get into the woods, his dad or his mom would stop him and wake him up. And, this happened several times. Well, eventually his father put up like a camera outside because he was trying to figure out who's knocking on the back door. And one day he looks at the video and he sees his son going out the back door. And he notices he just starts looking around like he's looking for something out in the woods, like something was calling him. And finally, his father comes running out and stops him. So the father started to get really creeped out. He told Christian and his brothers and sisters, do not go out in the woods. And he said that's when one night there was a very loud banging sound coming from the back door. And it was almost like someone was trying to get in this door. So he said his father grabs a baseball bat. He goes to the back door and he opens it. And he looks around, and out of the corner of his eyes, he sees something moving in the woods. So he said his father started to make his way towards the wood line. And that's when he sees something run back further into the woods. So his father starts to go into the woods down this trail, and he said he could see this thing from a distance. And he noticed when he would kind of move, it would move. Or when he would turn to the right, it would turn to the right. Or when he would turn to the left, it would turn to the left. And he said whatever he would do, whatever movement he would do, this thing would follow. And he said that's when he realized whatever this was, it was almost like looking at a mirror. This thing was copying him. It was following his every movement. So his father turns around, takes off running through the woods, gets back in the house, and tells everyone, "Get in the vehicle, we are leaving." And they moved that night and left everything behind in the house. And he said still to this day he has nightmares whenever he's near the woods because he still thinks about his time living in that place. Nebraska is a very spooky place. Now, a lot of people don't realize once you get west of Lincoln, there is just absolutely nothing. You can go miles and miles without seeing a person, a house, a car. And there are some areas where it is just completely dark and quiet. And you are in very remote, very desolate land. And this is why they call the place the Great Plains. There's also been a lot of strange and supernatural occurrences that have taken place in Nebraska. Now, one of the weird phenomenon that Nebraska has seen is these black-eyed children. There was a very famous report out of Valentine, Nebraska. There was this man who lived most of his life in and around Valentine. And one night he set off to go about an hour west to some friends' farmland that they would go out and go four-wheeling. So he sets off about 10 p.m. and he starts driving down this desolate, lonely highway. After about 30 minutes, he notices that there's this cemetery. It looked very old. It looked kind of creepy. As he's looking at the headstones, as he's driving by, he turns his head and immediately slams on the brakes because standing in front of him is this family. Looks like 3 or 4 people. He said as he looked closely at them, he could see there was a woman. She looked like the mom. She had this tethered, ripped up dress, this gray hair. She was pushing this old black looking stroller. And next to her was this taller man. He had on this button-up shirt, some suspenders, and dress pants. And there was also this young girl in this weird looking dress. He said he noticed they didn't move. They were just standing there right in front of his car. They didn't even seem to acknowledge that he had slammed on his brakes. So he rolls down the window and he starts yelling at them to move. And they don't respond. And that's when they all simultaneously turn their head at the same time and look directly at him. And he could see that they have these solid black eyes. So they began to make their way forward towards his vehicle. They were moving very awkwardly, almost contorting their bodies. So he pops the car in reverse. He starts speeding off backwards. But he ends up going into the ditch and he gets his tire stuck and it's spinning out. Well, that's when he noticed his family starts moving very fast towards his vehicle. And soon they are surrounding him. They begin to bang on the windows. They begin to grab the handle and try and get in his car. And they are screaming, "Let us in, let us in." So he hits his foot on the gas and just speeds off out of there. And as he's driving away, he looks in his rearview mirror. And as he looks behind him, he could see there's absolutely no one there. So in the next couple of years, he tells people about this story. And he said several others claim to have seen the exact same thing of these people with solid black eyes standing in the middle of the road. Now, in Lincoln, Nebraska, there's something known as the Holmes Lake Fishman. The Holmes Lake Fishman is best described as almost the creature from the Black Lagoon. It is a half man, half fish-like creature that's said to live within the murky lake. Now, there was this couple one night who were parked out by the lake, and they were sitting there with their windows down listening to music when they began to hear the splashing sound in the direction of the lake. And as they looked out onto the water, they began to see sort of a wake. And rising up out of the waves, they see what looks like this half man, half fish-like creature that was glowing sort of this luminescent green color. And it had moss or some kind of seaweed hanging from its body. And it proceeded to walk out of the water over to the shore, and it began to pick up some of the fish that were left out, the carcasses. And as it grabbed these fish, it then proceeded to walk back into the water. And this couple was left terrified. They would never return to that lake again. And since then, many people have reported seeing this Fishman of Holmes Lake. We had a sighting 2 nights ago in Phoenix, Arizona, right near Mesa on the Beeline Highway headed towards Fountain Hills. Now, apparently, this witness was driving down Beeline Highway headed east towards Fountain Hills when they said they spotted a very large object in the road. They slowed down and came to a stop, and they said they noticed what looked kind of like a wolf, a dog, in the middle of the road. They said this thing was kind of crawling very strange along the highway. It then stood up on 2 legs, looked at them, and let off this loud snarl, and then took off running into the desert. Now, there have been in the past couple years a few other strange UFO sightings, as well as a potential skinwalker sighting in this area. So to me, I'm wondering, did they potentially see a skinwalker? So I'm just curious, what do you think? If you live in the Phoenix area, have you seen anything like this?
Let's read a couple more true scary stories. The first story is titled Scary Figures in the Woods. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. This is completely true. It's been years and my siblings and I still bring it up. I have searched these things up several times and have yet to hear any similar stories. When I was about 11, 8 years ago, my family and I lived in a secluded area with about 3 neighbors that were also secluded. We had just gotten our trampoline, which we used frequently at all hours of the day. One evening, my older sister, who was 12 to 13 at the time, my younger brother, 8 to 9, and I were jumping on the trampoline when I heard my brother let out a shriek. Suddenly, 3 cloaked and rather short figures came out of the woods and toward the trampoline. My siblings and I immediately ran out and up to our house. We were very freaked out and tried to tell our parents what had happened, but when they looked outside in our backyard, nothing was there. These figures kind of remind me now of some sort of cryptid. I did not see any faces, and they were all around the same height, which was short, maybe around 4'8" to 5 feet. I still remember this incident very vividly, and there seems to be no explanation. We moved out of Washington about 2 years later, and the area where we live is no longer secluded. There are more houses and apartments, so the woods are pretty much non-existent over there now. Let me know what you thought that was. And the second story is titled, I Heard My Sister's Voice, but No One Was There. So a few years back, I remember sleeping in my room. It was sometime around the morning because I remember slightly opening my eyes and seeing the sun shine through the blinds before going back to sleep. A while later, I heard my door open and heard footsteps before I felt someone get on my bed. They stood above me and started jumping. I thought it was one of my sisters, so I, already annoyed because I wanted to sleep more, grumbled out, "Leave me alone," with my eyes closed. But I still felt the jumping. Then I heard one of my sister's voices whisper, "Get up." And it scared me, so I opened my eyes and immediately flipped to look at my door, and it was shut and locked. No one had come in, and even if my sister was in there, she couldn't have left that quickly. I would have saw her leaving or heard the door shut behind her. Spooks me to this day whenever I think about it. Let me know what you thought of those stories, and if you have any scary stories of your own, please just send me a DM.
House sitting. My eyes flew open when a hand clamped over my mouth. "Don't move," the man leaning over me commanded, and he had a knife that was glimmering in the darkness. A surge of fear jolted through me, and without thinking, I just thrust my hand upwards into his face and felt my palm meet his, I believe, nose with a revolting crunch. And then while he howled in pain, I hurled myself out of bed and into the adjoining bathroom, and I slammed the door shut and locked it just mere seconds before he smashed into it. "Get out of there," he shouted with heavy battering thuds banging at the door. I just shouted back, "Take whatever you want and leave. I won't call the police, I swear." He fell silent, and I held my breath anxiously, because for a fleeting moment, I thought he was gone, only for my stomach to drop when I heard the sound of a knife's blade gouging into wood, and I realized with horror that he was trying to carve his way through to me. And I was just whispering, "Please stop, this isn't even my house. The Day family hired me to stay here while they were on vacation." And then suddenly, I was hit by the very strong scent of rubbing alcohol. So I look down and see a clear liquid spreading beneath the door all across the bathroom tiles. And then he said, very threateningly, "You have 10 seconds to come out, or I light a match."
and a dizzying wave of terror washed over me. Like I had to grip the sink to keep from falling. And then he started barking 10, 9, and my eyes just frantically searched the room for anything I could find to defend myself with. 8, 7, 6, and I felt like I was being torn in half by this excruciating decision, you know, except whatever violent fate awaited me outside the door or perish in a fiery blaze. 5, 4, 3, and that's when I flung the door open. He raised his knife up, and I emptied the contents of a hairspray canister into his eyes. You know, he screamed in agony, and I pushed past him and ran. I made it as far as the staircase before he grabbed me by my hair and threw me to the ground, and his poisoned eyes were a furious shade of inflamed red. And he roared, "Oh, you," but his polluted vision sort of slowed him down and gave me enough time to deliver a swift kick to his knee. So he lost his balance and stumbled back. By the time he realized he was falling, it was already too late. So he plummeted down the stairs and landed in a bloody, broken heap. As I approached the man's crumpled body, I noticed a small blinking light fastened to his chest, and confusion dawned on me when I realized he was wearing a camera. And then I nearly jumped when his phone began vibrating in his pocket. It was an unknown number. I answered it silently, and a hideous sense of shock overtook me when a familiar voice spoke into my ear. "Is she dead yet?" Mr. Day asked excitedly. "I can't wait to see the footage."
A series of spooky stories, but it's unhinged mother-in-laws. Another anonymous one, my ex-mother-in-law, when she found out that her son was beating me, said, I quote, "How many times are you giving him adult fun playtime? Have you been cooking his meals? You must have done something to him." Also said while I was pregnant with his son, it's not even his. Zero contact with any of them now. My ex is in jail for the R word of a minor. I hope they all rot in hell. My partner was in the hospital. It wasn't great, but not life-threatening. Mother-in-law rang me drunk in the middle of the night during this week and told me how sad she was that he was in the hospital and that she just couldn't take it and was going to unalive herself. Told me that I had to say goodbye to all of her family for her and hung up. She was fine. She had passed out in her bed. I've never forgiven her for that. Was she involuntarily committed after that? Because what the fuck is this? Said I was being dramatic when I found out that I had to have a hysterectomy at age 28 because I cried. That's a big fucking deal. I could write a book, but the one that takes the cake is that she told my husband that she hoped that I died so she could live in a world without me and have him back. We are no contact. I have cancer. Who fucking says that shit? And why do these women want to fuck their sons so bad? Why do they want to be with their sons? I don't get it. My mother-in-law said to my 3-year-old daughter as she was taking pictures of her, "Let's get a picture without mommy's fat tummy in the background. I'm 9 months pregnant." Pregnant or fucking not. Knock that bitch the fuck out. I was 8 months pregnant, just got off 4 months of bed rest. My mother-in-law bought me Slim Fast because my belly was getting too big. I lost 50 pounds while I was pregnant. She told my kids to lie to me. Not my husband's kids, mind you. He is the stepdad. We are no contact. If a bitch ever tells my fucking kids to lie to me, they're gonna be lying on the ground with a bloody fucking nose.
I'm gonna show y'all a clip today because y'all want to know the very exact moment that I realized that I wasn't just living in an old house, that it was actually mimicking my own family. No, seriously, because there is nothing worse than realizing that the voice that you answered didn't even belong to the person that you thought it did. And hey, Toxins, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee, and not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. Now, before I tell y'all what happened the next day, I need y'all to understand something. At this point, I genuinely had thought that I was losing my mind. Here it is.
It's late at night. You hear a knock on the door. You don't think anything of it because you're expecting your daughter to be home anytime soon. You go to the door, you ask, "Who is it?" And you hear it say your daughter's name, and it sounds like her voice. So you open the door. When you open the door, this is what you see. Absolutely nothing. But before you close the door, a cold chill comes all the way across your body. And hairs on the back of your neck and your arm stands up. And you hear something close behind you. When you turn back around, your attic door is open, but no one is there. Now let me back up. This was just like a normal Tuesday night. It was pouring down, raining outside, y'all. And my baby girl, my youngest, she was out with her sister, her oldest sister. And I was at home by myself. I was just winding down in the living room. I had the TV on low and I was just trying to relax. And then I heard 3 fucking knocks. Chill. You see that? It was heavy knocks. And I was like, damn, why she hitting on the door so hard? And I felt like she was hitting through the floorboard. So I didn't think anything of it at first. So I figured maybe she had forgot her key or she came back early. So I walked up to the door and then I looked through the peephole, but the porch lights was like flickering a little bit and I couldn't see anything out there. So I asked, who is it? Clear as day. The voice answered back, y'all. Mom, it's me. Open up. Baby. When I tell y'all it sounded exactly like my daughter, same tone, same pitch, even the little breath that she take before she talk, y'all, it was her voice. It was her voice. So I unlocked the deadbolt, I turned the knob, and I swung the door open. And there was absolutely nothing there, as you can see. No daughter, no sister, no car in the driveway, just complete black darkness staring back at me. Now, before I could even process what was happening, this freezing chill ran straight down my body. And it felt like I had just walked into my damn deep freezer or something. Because every hair on the back of my neck was standing up, y'all. My body went into defense mode before my brain could even catch up. Because something in me knew that this was happening again. This isn't the first time this happened. I had just opened up the door to something that was using my child's voice. And you see, I slammed that door and I locked it. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears, y'all. And I was just standing there trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. I was trying to make sense of it. And then I heard the damn scraping noise. It was like loud wood on wood. And it was coming from above me. And it was like a heavy ass snap. And what the fuck is that? So I looked back. The attic door was wide open, y'all. That heavy wooden panel stays shut all the time. I'm scared of that damn attic. The ladder didn't even drop down, but the door was wide open. And when I looked up, I was gaping into complete darkness, y'all. Remember, I am home alone. There is nobody in this house but me. So how the fuck did that happen? And honestly, that wasn't even the end of it. Ever since that night, the noises never stopped. Every single night. Sometimes it be in the middle of the daytime, y'all. The sun can still be shining through the window, and I would hear those footsteps pacing back across that attic, back and forth. And the attic is like the whole entire house up there. Just noises, just steps and drags. The whole entire fucking day. And it's very active at night. Right over my living room, then over the hallway, then stepping right above my bedroom, the kids' bedroom. Damn, these chills. I've gone up there with flashlights. I've paid people to inspect it. We've looked for squirrels. We've looked for raccoons. We've looked for rats. It's nothing up there. No droppings, no nests, no signs of animals. No footsteps in the dust. Nothing. Everything looks untouched. And yet the walking continues. But you know what's up there in that old ass attic? It's this old ass baby crib. It doesn't belong to me. It's already up there. And it's wooden. It's like a wooden, and I can't really describe the damn thing. And it's like a roll of carpet. And I just know that some experiences change the way that you move through the world. Because once you open your front door expecting to see someone that you love, and then you found nothing but darkness staring back at you,
you will stop answering everything that calls your name. So let me ask y'all this. What would you have done if you opened that damn front door to your child's voice, only to find out it's complete darkness and something else that you invited into your house? And now you got something pacing above your head every damn night. Let's talk about this in the comments. Oh, and I don't live in that house no more. I left that motherfucking place and then ended up moving into another haunted place. That's another story though. But I want y'all to lock y'all gates. I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next video.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I've always been a little sensitive to paranormal things. No matter where I've lived, there have always been moments that felt different. But this is the most recent thing that's ever happened to me, and honestly, it's the one that still creeps me out the most. A few years ago, my husband, my 1-year-old son, and I were living in Florida. The house was beautiful. It was the kind of home that people dreamed about owning. But besides it being gorgeous and us loving the home, there were parts of it that never felt right. The master bedroom, for example, especially the bathroom connected to it. For some reason, whenever I walked into that area, the vibe just felt completely different from the rest of the house. The air always seemed colder. The light never hit the space like it did in the rest of the home, and the sound would almost be sucked up immediately instead of playfully bouncing off the walls. At first, I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself it was poor ventilation, the way the home was built, or maybe just my imagination. But then I started noticing my son. Whenever I changed his diaper or got him ready for bed in that room, he would stare at something behind me. Not occasionally, mind you. This was constant. Almost every time, his eyes would lock onto the same area and stay there. And every time I'd turn around, nothing was there. No movement, no shadows, nothing. Then one evening, something happened that made the atmosphere in that house feel even more strange. It was around 7 at night. I was home alone with my son while my husband was out. And at some point, my toddler managed to open the refrigerator. Before I could stop him, he climbed onto the lower drawer and somehow reached an olive jar sitting on an upper shelf. The jar came crashing down, and glass exploded everywhere. Tiny shards scattered across the entire room. Since it was getting late, I decided to put my son to bed first and deal with the olive disaster after. I didn't want to chance him crawling through the broken glass, so after he was asleep, I went back into the kitchen and noted that the house felt more quiet than it normally does. The sound wasn't traveling like it normally would, but I convinced myself that I was just still rattled over the entire situation, and I started cleaning. And as I'm doing so, I heard a noise, a tick, a single sharp tick. I froze. I thought it was coming from one of the ceiling spotlights. Maybe the fixture was cooling down or expanding, so I waited. A few seconds later, tick. I immediately looked up. Nothing. The light wasn't moving. There was no sound afterwards. I shook it off and kept cleaning. And it happened a third time. Tick. Every single time, I somehow knew exactly when it was coming. Every time I looked up, expecting to catch the source, nothing happened. The sound only seemed to occur the moment I stopped paying attention. As soon as I went back to cleaning, tick. It felt intentional. Like something was waiting for me to look away. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Maybe I was tired, maybe being alone was making me paranoid. So I finished cleaning and I went to bed. A few weeks later, I was working in our office one night. The room sat near the front entrance of the house, and I was focused on a project and had music playing fairly loud through my speakers. My husband was in the living room watching television. The living room was on the opposite side of the house near the backyard. There was a decent amount of distance between us, and I remember being completely absorbed in what I was doing when suddenly, bang, 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 3 loud knocks hit the wooden office door. 3 solid and deliberate knocks. Loud enough to cut through my music. Naturally, I assumed it was my husband, so without even looking up, I said, "Come in." Silence. A few seconds passed and nobody opened the door. The door wasn't locked, so if it had been my husband, he would have just walked in. But I looked toward the door and called out, "It's unlocked." Still, nothing. No answer, no footsteps, no movement. At this point, I started thinking he was trying to mess with me. Maybe he was standing outside for a reaction. So I rolled my eyes, got up, and opened the door. But the second I pulled it open and looked into the hallway, it was empty. The guest bathroom, immediately to my right, empty. The hallway, empty. The rest of the house was dark, except for the glow of the television coming from the living room. I walked quietly towards it. There was my husband, lying on the couch, scrolling on his phone, completely relaxed, like he'd been there for hours. I just stood there staring at him. There was absolutely no way he could have knocked on my office door, sprinted back across the house, laid down, pulled out his phone, and looked as calm as he did within a matter of seconds. So I outright asked him, "Did you knock on my door?" He looked confused and he laughed and asked if I was messing with him. But the second he saw how shaken I was, his expression changed. He realized I wasn't joking. I was genuinely terrified. Together, we checked every room in the house. Every closet, every door, every window, nothing. And we checked the security cameras, nothing. No motion alerts, no sensor activations, nobody outside, nobody entering the house, nobody leaving. Just to be sure, I even replayed the song I'd listened to. Maybe somehow the knocking had come from the music. There wasn't a single sound in the recording that resembled those knocks. Not even close. Later, I learned something unsettling. The previous owner of that house had actually died in the home. And maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe it has absolutely nothing to do with what I experienced, but I still find myself wondering if we weren't the only ones living there.
Let's look at some terrifying Reddit photos. The poster of this first photo claims to have been having some weird, unexplainable occurrences in their house. They would notice things such as their belongings falling over on their own, lights turning on and off, and feeling cold drafts in their house even though there was no AC or fans or windows open. And according to this person's partner, they also started talking in their sleep, except they were speaking in another language that didn't sound anything like English. And English is this person's only language. These experiences continued for the poster, and one night they got up to use the bathroom. And while making their way over to the bathroom, they noticed a shadow figure standing in the hallway. Naturally, they took a picture, and they saw this. The poster of this second photo lets us know that they used to live in an RV, and directly above the area where they slept in this RV there was a vent, kind of like a car's sunroof. One night this person was trying to sleep like usual, except they started to hear a weird scratching and snorting sound, and shortly after the RV began to rock back and forth. This person's immediate thought was that it might have been an animal trying to get into the RV, so they started to take some flash pictures and videos to see if they could capture anything. But instead of capturing an animal, they captured something else, something that the poster described as a cryptid or a demonic entity looking back at them through the RV vent. I have the creepiest video to show you. I look at countless creepy videos for my content, and this is easily one of the scariest ones that I've seen. This video was taken on an empty road late at night in Mexico. However, the original source and publication date are unknown. In the video, we see a family sitting in their car late at night, but there's another presence there with them. We can see a dark figure with bright red eyes staring directly into their car. And I'm not sure how visible this is to anyone else, but it appears to have horns at the front of its head. We can hear a child crying in the back seat and what sounds like a panicked conversation between the parents. The genuine panic heard in this video has led people to believe that this might be a legitimate sighting of a demon, while others are not entirely convinced and believe it could be some kind of hoax or prank. Personally, I'm not too sure of either option, but what I am sure about is that this video is terrifying. As always, let me know what you think.
I'm always saying that just because you can't see the ghost doesn't mean that the ghost isn't there. And this photo that I found on Reddit is the perfect example of how the ghost is there, but you may have missed it. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. So this person was out ghost hunting with a friend and the friend's dad when they went into this stone home. It was abandoned, obviously. Out that door is about a 2 to 3 foot drop. They're on the first floor, looking around, talking, just kind of being somewhere they probably shouldn't have been, and not really getting any weird vibes. And they didn't look at the photos till they got back, and then they saw this. Tell me if you can see what's off about this photo. I'll give you a second. All right, let's zoom in on it. Do you see that thing above my head? Now, it is not a spider web. They went back and checked, they said, and they went during the day the next day, but you can see 2 eyes, and it appears to be looking at you. It's up in the corner there. If you're missing it, it's right here, but let's change the lighting a little bit and see what we get. Lovely. Clearly, there's some kind of nose, eyes, forehead. You can see the hair. Some are saying that this is like an arm right here, this dark spot, kind of like a crawler. If you don't know what a crawler is, they're scary. And here it is with the lighting a little different as well. Look at the face. Some may want to say that that's like pareidolia or whatever, and to that I say, be so for real. What would you do if you were out ghost hunting and felt like you found nothing, but in reality, this was following you around the whole time and you had no idea? So like I said, when you are in haunted places, just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there.
When I was 13, my parents sent me to spend the summer at my grandparents' ranch in Guanajuato, deep in the countryside. Their home was surrounded by rolling hills, prickly cacti, and a rocky dirt path that led into an old oak forest. People in the village often told stories about that forest. Stories about La Bruja, who lived there. I always thought it was just a legend meant to scare kids. But that summer, I learned otherwise. One night, we were sitting under the stars when my abuelo warned me not to go near the forest after dark. La bruja busca almas jóvenes, he said. Se lleva a los niños curiosos. I left nervously, expecting my abuela to dismiss it like she usually did. But she didn't. She stayed quiet, her face tense, and slowly made the sign of the cross. A week later, I was playing soccer with my cousins when the ball rolled down the hill toward the forest edge. They dared me to go get it. Not wanting to seem scared, I ran after it. As I picked up the ball, a sudden chill came over me. Even though it was warm out, I noticed movement in the trees. There, in the shadows, stood a hunched figure draped in a tattered black shawl. She didn't move, but I could feel her watching me. I ran back without looking behind me. My cousins laughed, thinking I was just scared of the dark, but I couldn't shake her image. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I heard a soft tapping at the window. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I heard a soft tapping at the window. I told myself it was just the wind, but the tapping grew louder. When I looked, I saw her again. The same hunched figure standing outside the window. Her face was pale and sunken. Her eyes were hollow, but faintly glowing red. Her lips moved like she was whispering, but no sound came through. I screamed, and my abuelo came rushing in. When he saw her, he grabbed his machete and shouted, "Fuera de aquí, bruja! Esta casa está protegida por Dios." She didn't move until he held up the cross around his neck. Then she growled and vanished into the night. The next morning, my abuelo told me the truth. The bruja was real. Cast out of the village long ago for practicing dark magic. They said she made pacts with demons and fed on souls to stay alive. He said she's drawn to fear and warned me to never go near the forest again. Before I left Guanajuato, he gave me a small wooden cross and said, "Jesús te protege, pero tú también debes rezar." I still carry it with me, and whenever I feel afraid or sense something dark, I clutch it and pray. That summer taught me that evil is real, but so is the power of faith. It's a lesson I'll never forget. I wanted to share my story with you and hope you get spooked out, but this traumatized me. I used to believe in La Santa Muerte, and I was a very strong believer in her. People talk about both the good and bad sides of her, but I only went to her for good. One day, I decided to change religions and start believing in God. When I told my family and friends, they warned me it was a bad idea. They said she could get angry, but I went through with it anyway. I said my goodbyes to her, just not in the right way, and I truly regret that. At the time, I worked late nights as a cook at a university. I usually closed the kitchen alone, which was scary because the space was so big and empty at night. My son stayed with my mom while I worked. It was around midnight, almost 1 a.m., when I finished closing and headed to my mom's house to pick him up before going home. While I was driving, I got this overwhelming bad feeling, like something was about to happen. I tried to ignore it, but I still called my boyfriend and told him how I felt, asking him to stay on the phone with me until I got home. I was about 3 blocks from my mom's house when I stopped at a red light. My son was in the back seat. Suddenly, something told me to check my rear view mirror. When I did, I saw a large truck coming up fast behind me. Way too fast, and not slowing down. I remember thinking, he's going to stop, right? But he didn't. He slammed into the back of my car and then sped off. As he drove away, I jumped out of my car and screamed at the top of my lungs, "What the hell is your problem? I have a kid in the car." And then I saw something I never want to see again. It was her, La Santa Muerte. I saw her in the reflection on the passenger side of the truck. She looked angry, and in that moment I knew this was her way of letting me know she was upset and that she had received my message.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
In this case, there's really only 2 pieces of evidence that police have never been able to figure out, and it's one of the most baffling cases I've ever come across. Joan Reich was a typical stay-at-home mom in the 1960s. She had 2 kids, she was married, and at the time of her disappearance, her husband was away on a business trip. On the morning of October 24th of 1961, Joan woke up. Her husband left for his business trip that day. She woke up several hours later, gave the kids breakfast, and then took her little boy over to the neighbor's house so that she could watch him. She then took her daughter to a dentist appointment. They did some shopping, and while they were gone, the mailman and the milkman came over, and no one noticed anything weird. After they got back from all of that, Joan had picked up her son, brought the kids home, fed them lunch, and then she had put her little boy down for a nap at about 1 p.m., and that would usually last until 2 p.m. The neighbor who had kept her little boy came over with her son, and the two older kids were playing together in the backyard. The kids had seen Joan pruning her garden, like just doing a little light gardening in and around the house. At about 2:15, the neighbor saw Joan in a trench coat holding something red out from her body, like holding it out, and she just assumed that Joan was playing with the kids, but this is the last confirmed sighting of Joan. After this, one of the girls got off the bus and she did see a strange vehicle in the area, but she thought nothing of it and went on with it. The neighbor who had kept the children throughout the day, she left the house at about 3:40 that afternoon. She had a couple of errands to run herself, and she didn't get back until 4:15 that afternoon. When she got back, Joan's little girl, her name was Lillian, came to her house and said, "Mommy's gone and there's red paint all over the kitchen." The neighbor went over to the house, and there she found the little boy, the really small boy, in his crib crying, and he needed a diaper change. She noticed that Joan was not there, and so she called police at about 4:33 that afternoon. When police arrived, they found the 2 clues. So some of the things that they found was that the mail had not been brought in or opened for that day, and the phone book was opened up to what looked to be emergency numbers, but the most strange is this little trash can that we can see right here. You can see the receiver of the phone is in the trash can. It had been taken off of the phone itself and put into the trash can. This trash can was normally under the sink, and it was kind of right in the middle of the kitchen. Also, there were beer cans all over the place, and this was not a beer that either Joan or her husband drank. Found blood smeared all over the kitchen. It was on the walls, it was on the floor, it was everywhere. But it wasn't enough to determine if Joan was passed. Joan's husband was alerted and he changed his plans and flew back to Boston immediately to help search for his wife. And initially, police thought that maybe Joan had done this to herself because they said that the bloodstains didn't line up with a struggle, but more so someone had injured themselves and they were trying to like stagger around the kitchen. On top of that, it did appear as if the bloodstains had been cleaned up. There is a ton more about this that you can read on the internet about this case, and I really suggest that you look into it. There are a couple of theories that maybe Joan was abducted at the time of her, or that she was abducted, which could, it stands to reason because her oldest daughter was not in the house, so she wasn't there to witness anything, and her young son was very little, so he wouldn't be able to tell anyone anything. Other people have theorized that she was pregnant and she tried to get rid of the baby on her own and then went missing. When went missing, I mean she made herself, she disappeared herself, I guess you could say. Some people do think that she was just tired of this life and that she wanted something different, and so she just vanished on her own. But this one doesn't really make sense to me because she seemed to be pretty content in her life. And maybe I didn't read the right articles and there's something else out there, but this one just really doesn't make sense to me either. Also, the beer cans on the kitchen counter that neither of them drank seems really weird. Obviously somebody was in the house, but who was it? I don't know. This case will just pop into my head every now and then and I'll just be like, what happened to this woman? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that, she disappeared by herself or was someone else involved? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more true crime.
The most disturbing part about the Elisa Lam case is not the skepticism about the hotel being haunted or that something had possessed her or that she was being chased by something we can't see. It's the fact that people were literally drinking her. I used to believe all of the theories when the videos first came out, but after watching this documentary about the case, I truly just believe that this was someone suffering from an extreme mental health crisis. And I'm more sad for her than I am scared about the situation, even though the footage of her in the elevator is very eerie. But the most horrific part is that her body had sat so long in that water tank that the people staying at the Cecil were actually consuming her. I never really hear anyone mentioning that aspect of it because everyone is just so focused on what led up to the moment she ended up in the water tank. So the disturbing things about Elisa's case is that, for one, this poor girl climbed into a water tank and was unable to get back out, and it really just stirs something up in me when I imagine what that desperation must have felt like and wonder how long she waited there helplessly before ultimately passing away. And secondly, people who had no involvement in any of this were unknowingly subjected to drinking the same water that she floated in for nearly a month. We shouldn't be skimming over that part.
I deported my husband back to Africa due to what he did to me. You need to hear me out before you judge me. The fact that his family has the nerve to call me the most evil person, the most heartless person they've ever met on earth is actually mind-blowing. Story time. So I've been married to my husband for 15 good years now. 15 good years. I'm the one that brought him into this country. And now, looking back, all the signs, the red flags, it says it all. The reason why I was approached in the first place was only and purely because of documentation for him to get into this country. Anyway, like I said, we've been married. I've met his family, not in person, via video call. He introduced me to his mum, his dad, his brothers, and one sister he's got. So I thought. And this sister, I have been sending her money. I ring her anytime we have issues. She would advise me what to do. Fast forward, my husband came home one day, distraught. He was in tears. And I asked him what the problem is. He knelt on the ground and he started pleading with me. He said to me that he's really sorry. He doesn't really know what made him do this, but he has got something he needs to confess to me. I told him that I'm listening. He started off by telling me that he has been having this affair with this woman closer to 8 years, and they have got a child together. Bearing in mind, we have been married for 15 good years, and he kept telling me that I should hold off for having children for now so that we will invest in the businesses, properties back home. And now you are telling me that you've been having an affair and you have got a child outside of our marriage. He told me everything about this woman. I didn't say anything. I felt numb. I felt betrayed. I couldn't understand where I went wrong for him to actually betray me like this. Anyway, I searched for this woman, and God being wonderful, I found her on social media. I sent her a DM, and she replied back. Not straight away, it took a while, but she replied back. I explained everything. It was as if this woman was waiting for my message somehow. So she took my contact details and she rang me. She started telling me how my husband has been deceiving the both of us. I shouted. I went, what do you mean the both of us? She said, did I know that the girl that I've been contacting back home, whom my husband claims to be his sister, is actually his wife? They've been married 2 years before we got married. So she's actually his legal wife and not me. I could not believe what I was hearing on the phone. I asked what is going on and how she found out. And she said he lied to her and he promised her marriage. But somehow she managed to find messages and my number on his phone. She then threatened him to contact me and she was going to expose all his lies, because this woman was severely angry for what my husband did to her. Hence the reason why he came home and he started confessing, because he didn't want her to reach out to me and tell me about his wife back home. Fact is that I was lost. I had to hang up the phone call. I contacted my lawyer. I contacted a few people and I did what I needed to do, ready for him to be deported back home where he was. So I waited. He was served the papers and he came crawling, he came begging, telling me that it is not true. That woman lied to me. I rang his family and I asked them why they did this to me. They were saying that they didn't know how to break the news to me because I wouldn't accept being a second wife. So they had to just play along. I got contact with his family. Now, I'm getting different numbers ringing me almost every day, telling me that it's just something small. So how can I be so heartless? How can I be so evil? How can I be so mean just for something that small? Asking them to deport my husband back home. It got to a point that I stopped answering phone calls for numbers that I do not know or recognize. So for now, he's back to where he belongs. Some people are telling me that I should have just let him go and just move on. That way God will bless me. But sometimes the pain is too much to just brush away.